Mr. Vice President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to address a high-level segment of the 58th session of the Human Rights Council. We send our congratulations to His Excellency Ambassador Jur Glauber on his election as the President of the Human Rights Council and wish the newly elected Bureau continued success in all endeavors. Today, the world confronts multiple crises, including ravaging conflicts, climate change, deepening inequalities, erosion of multilateralism, growing disregard for the fundamental norms and principles of international law, which endanger enjoyment of human rights and fulfillment of basic human needs in every part of the world. It is precisely the time when we have to demonstrate international solidarity and cooperation, step up our efforts to build more effective multilateralism, strengthening the United Nations as a central multilateral system. Azerbaijan is actively engaged in cooperation within the human rights framework, including treaty bodies and special procedure mandate holders. Most recently, our periodic reports under the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the Convention Against Torture and other cruel, inhumane and degrading treatment or punishment have been reviewed. Excellencies, climate change is one of the greatest challenges of our time, with adverse impacts that are increasingly felt by all, particularly by the vulnerable communities. We need to strengthen our collective actions to address the climate change and accelerate meeting our obligations under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement. In this regard, the 29th Conference of the Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, successfully organized in Baku, was significant in demonstrating Azerbaijan's leadership at the international level. Under the presidency of Azerbaijan, the COP29 successfully realized two key priorities. First, the new collective quantified goal on climate finance, NCQG, and second, the implementation of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement for carbon markets, along with many other tangible outcomes. The NCQG decision, adopted at COP29 for the first time in the history of climate negotiations, included a call for all actors to increase climate funding to developing countries from all public and private sources to 1.3 trillion United States dollars annually by year 2035. 14 global and 7 regional initiatives announced as part of the COP29 Presidency Action Agenda received support at the global level and aim to strengthen climate action. Excellency, the end of the long-lasting armed conflict with Armenia and restoration of Azerbaijan's sovereignty and territorial integrity have opened enormous prospects for bringing peace and stability to our region, turning the page of enmity and embarking on good neighborly relations. Despite the wounds of the armed aggression imposed on my country, the wisdom of our nation has enabled us to offer peace to Armenia. Over the past year, Azerbaijan and Armenia have registered a significant progress in the normalization process through direct bilateral negotiations, in particular with respect to drafting a bilateral peace agreement and the delimitation and demarcation of the state border. At this point, we expect Armenia to eliminate the key barrier in the normalization process, which is to legally abandon territorial claims against Azerbaijan through the constitutional amendments. The post-conflict rehabilitation requires eradication of all consequences of the conflict, which includes in particular bringing suspected perpetrators of atrocious crimes to justice. This is not only the right, but the obligation of Azerbaijan under international law to hold to account those suspected of having committed war crimes. This is the context within which the trials currently undertaken in Azerbaijan, which the Foreign Minister of Armenia mentioned today, should be viewed. We have ensured and will continue to ensure all the procedural rights of those accused in accordance with the international standards of due process, but justice will be served. Speaking of the crimes committed during the war, it is of vital importance to shed light on the fate of about 4,000 citizens of Azerbaijan who went missing as a result of the conflict and to end the continuing suffering of their families. We call on the relevant UN bodies and mechanisms to keep this issue high on the agenda and demand full cooperation from Armenia in order to bring clarity to the fate and whereabouts of our compatriots. Another pressing issue is to ensure safe and dignified return of more than 250,000 Azerbaijanis expelled from Armenia during the early years of the conflict, who remain deprived of the ancestral homeland in blatant violation of international human rights law. The calls of Western Azerbaijan community, once constituting the largest national minority in Armenia, to start a dialogue on facilitation of their peaceful return remain disregarded and often deliberately misinterpreted by the Armenian government as a territorial claim by Azerbaijan. This is an issue of concern for us that require due consideration by the relevant UN mechanisms. It is noteworthy that Azerbaijan has engaged in large-scale post-conflict reconstruction efforts for ensuring the right of 100,000 of internally displaced Azerbaijanis to safe and dignified return to the formerly occupied territories. Azerbaijan has developed and implemented the program of Great Return, as a result of which several hundred families have already returned to their homeland. Regrettably, the massive contamination of territories of Azerbaijan with landmines and other explosive devices remains a significant obstacle to the smooth progress of our reconstruction efforts. Since the end of the conflict in 2020, up to 400 individuals, mostly the civilians, have fallen victim to landmines. With this in mind, Azerbaijan has introduced a national goal, SDG 18, focusing on mine action. We are thankful to all stakeholders who have contributed to humanitarian demining in Azerbaijan, and given the scale of the problem, we reiterate our call for increased international support to strengthen Azerbaijan's humanitarian mine action capacity. We also call on the Council and the relevant special procedure mandate holders to address the negative impact of mines on enjoyment of human rights and rehabilitation of mine victims. In conclusion, I wish to reaffirm our commitment to contributing to international peace and security, promoting respect for international law and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms for a better future for all. And I thank you.